Okay, whenever you're ready.
All right. Well, welcome everyone. Tonight is the third in a series of discussions that we've been having with residents located near some of our downtown development planned projects. And this is one of the most exciting things we get to do here. And that is reimagine our downtown. Our thoughts for redevelopment downtown started back in 2000 with the first master plan that was addressing the downtown, was included in our master plan of 2010, and then again inside our master plan of 2020, which was recently adopted. And in putting together the plan for 2020, we had well over 100, maybe 200, Jim, you probably know better than I, residents contribute to the plan and make a group think on what our downtown development plans should look like. And so tonight we have an opportunity to take a look at some of the planning that's been going into the process. It is for 3 different properties or areas in Highland Park. Economic development and downtown development has been a main thrust of my administration and the council's direction because, quite frankly, economic development and redevelopment downtown is the only real hope we have for making our downtown and our tax base here livable. What we want to do with this plan is bring more and more people into our downtown so that our stores thrive and we become even more vibrant community than we are today. What we've learned is that 2 of our fastest growing age demographics in Highland Park, the baby boomers and the millennials, all want the same kind of thing. They want to be able to live in a downtown area where they can go downstairs, get a cup of coffee, meet with their friends, walk if they want to transportation that can get them to New York City or Philadelphia or other points further south or north. And that's why Highland Park has been so successful in recent years in attracting new residents. So tonight, we're going to talk about some of the plans for our downtown development. And I'm going to turn it over right now to our Councilman Matt Hale, who's the council chair of our Economic Development Committee. So Matt.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. I'm looking at the attendees, and so I see a number of familiar names out there. So I'm glad that there's repeat customers in terms of this. So for those of you who are new, my role here is to sort of give an overview and a somewhat about the guiding principles that the council and the mayor tried to give the professional staff as they sort of shape this outline. And one of the things that I think is important is really what we're talking about tonight is not a finished plan, not that this is exactly what the buildings are going to look like, that this is exactly how things are. This is a framework and a shell by which we are sort of putting design and ideas down of what we'd like to see. And so with that, I'm going to sort of talk about some of the guiding principles that are important to the council, important to the mayor, and what we ask the professional staff to do. So the first thing is that we wanted to make sure that all of the things that you're going to see tonight are consistent with the master plan. As many of you participated, and many of you know, we went through an extensive master planning process, an update of the master plan last year with the land use element as well. We had numerous community meetings and a great deal of community involvement in updating our master plan and the land use element. And we want to follow that. We want to make sure that whatever we do downtown is consistent with that guiding document. And so that's sort of the first premise that we're going into with this. as the mayor said, the fundamental and I think guiding goal of this entire process is we need to get more people downtown. We need to get more people living downtown, more people eating downtown, more people drinking downtown, more people walking, biking, everything we can do to get more people on the avenue. And so the way to do that is to bring the houses to the avenue, to bring the apartments to the avenue. And that's really what a big part of this plan does. And so the goal of that is that the people that will be living down there will be shopping down there and eating down there and going to dry cleaners down there and nail salons down there. And that is a customer base that can help all of the downtown businesses survive and grow. And so that's a fundamental part of all of this, is to get more people on the avenue. We also came up with an idea that we were very clear we don't want to be Metuchen. And what I mean by that is that Highland Park has a character to it that is different than other places. It is different than Metuchen. We are quirkier. We have a lot more diversity of residents than many places, and we celebrate that. And so when we get in down the road, not in what you're going to see tonight, but when we get down the road, we are very excited about possibilities for buildings that are innovative and creative and distinctive, that say you are entering Highland Park, or this is Highland Park. And I think that's very important to us, is that we maintain that independent streak, that Highland Park character. Another important thing for the council and for the mayor that is fundamental, we want to get right on the table, is that affordable housing is not optional. Affordable housing is required in all of these buildings that you will see. And that's because we value affordable housing, not because we're meeting some state mandate, not because we are getting our quota, but we think that affordable housing mixed with market rent housing is the value of Highland Park. And so we've been very, very clear that despite the fact that there could be some additional benefits of 100% market housing, that's not acceptable to Highland Park, that there will be significant affordable housing components to this. It's not optional. We also have talked quite a bit, and for those of you who've been here other nights, we've talked a lot about what I like to say is walking the walk. When we were doing the master plan process, the number one selling point, the number one idea that people love about Highland Park is that we are a walking town. And you know, so many people say, oh, Highland Park, that's a walking town. I know that's one of the reasons I came to Highland Park, is because it's a walking town. And so we need to make sure that whatever the development we do celebrates that and makes that even more a part of what Highland Park is about. So when we're talking about the apartments, we're talking about people walking downtown. We're talking about bikes downtown. We're walking the walk and hopefully talking the talk. So we're going to make sure that the buildings, that the development downtown is compatible with that sort of lifestyle, with a walking lifestyle, with a biking lifestyle, with less of a car-centric lifestyle. Those are goals that we're hoping will work. A big part of that is that we need to incorporate public space into all of our design elements. And so we have what I see is a very creative, very, I don't know if I'd call it cutting edge, but I'd certainly call it cool, a festival street that we hope will become the center of town, will be the place that the farmers market will be, the place that we will have movies, the place that we will have bands, the place that we will have local concerts, and the place that we will come together. And there's a great deal of space, as you'll see in a little bit, on this idea of a festival street, which is innovative and distinctive, and again goes back to the character of Highland Park that we think is quite important. So again, I want to reiterate that what you're going to see tonight is really at the beginning of this process. Our goal tonight is to put some pictures out so that people can see. And so that my son, who is upstairs having a great time, who you might hear in the background, is going to be able to walk down Raritan Avenue someday and see how exciting this is. So I apologize for that. But the idea is tonight. This is a framework, a vision. As Joe Bauman might say a little later on, this is the beginning marble before you craft the statue. I love that analogy, and hope Joe will use it again tonight. So those are the guidelines. Those are the marching orders that we gave to the professional staff. I think they've done a fantastic job in putting this together. It's a work in progress. It's a work that we are excited to do with you. We are excited to hear your feedback and recognize that, one of the great things about Highland Park is sometimes we disagree, and that's okay. We like to have disagreements, and we like to have them because we all care so much about Highland Park. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to someone who cares as much about Highland Park as any person on the entire planet, someone who works harder for Highland Park than just about anybody on the entire planet. Our borough administrator, Terry Hover, who has really been an unbelievable presence in getting us to this point. We're very, very lucky to have her, and she's going to walk you through where we are in the process, what are the other steps that will happen, and we'll take it from there. So thank you very much. Terry, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Again, very nice intro. I'm going to do a quick share screen just to make my little points. And they'll be brief, and we'll get to the fun stuff, as I like to call it. But yes, this is stakeholder meeting number 3. We're focusing in on the North Third area, identified as Tract D in the materials that you've seen. And our planning team has plenty of illustrations to show in a moment. But really quick, just to go over the format, we've had our welcomes and introductions. I think I'll just follow through by introducing Jim Constantine and Chris Cosenza, who's our planning team from LRK, as well as the special counsel for redevelopment, Joe Bauman, who will be joining, I think, via phone, so you won't maybe see his face, but he is on the line and will be available to answer questions that may come up during the course of our discussion. So I'm here just to kind of provide a quick overview first of how this meeting's going to work. For those of you who didn't join previously, we're going to hear this presentation from Jim and Chris, and then we're going to move into public comments. We're going to ask people to, although I did not, this is what happens when you save as, we'll be focusing on Tract D this evening, which is the North Third area, but we will have, if the time allows, we will allow comments on the overall concepts that we'll be showing you this evening. So again, this is the Tract D evening. That's just a save as mistake on my part. We're going to limit to about 3 minutes per person to our best of ability, and we're going to try to stop by 8 o'clock. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of some of those constraints there. And some of this was already iterated, and I'll just mention our foundation kind of work started last year in the master plan reexamination report and land use plan element that were adopted. And those are all documents available on our website, and I'd encourage anybody who's planning on following this process to check that out. And then the public engagement, so that's the foundation, and then so is public engagement, a big foundation to how this plan will come together. These 3 meetings this week are, we're already seeing adjustments, and those of you who've maybe come from one evening to another may see some tweaks based on comments we've seen so far. So this is really an iterative process. And then we're gearing up for our first kind of general public meeting, as I'll refer to it, on November 17th, which is a regularly scheduled meeting of council as a redevelopment entity. So that'll be also on Zoom and at 7 o'clock. And our expectation is to have a draft plan to share by that meeting that will also be fully presented and available. So that's our kind of target goal, and we feel like we're on track for that. The second kind of general public meeting that'll be available again on Zoom, just that's our borough is not getting together for large meetings until we get this virus out of our lives, is December 10th at 7:30 p.m. That's a regularly scheduled planning board meeting. That's an opportunity not just to present to the planning board, but to the general public and take feedback from both the board and the public at that time. And then we're on track for if all goes well, we'll hopefully have a public hearing on December 15th at 7 o'clock at the regularly scheduled council meeting. Again, that's an opportunity to voice concerns or comments at that point. So there are many bites along the way. And I also encourage, many of you have already availed yourself of my email, but I would encourage you to feel free to please do that as we go through this process. As you have questions, as you have comments, I will field them. I will bounce them through the professionals as needed, but you can please reach out to me directly and I'll make sure they get heard. So that's TJO, V as in Victor, ER at hpborough.com. I'm just reading that because I know a couple people are on the phone and I don't know if they have access to a screen. And lastly, I just want to make sure everybody's aware, once we have an adopted plan, the process doesn't just stop and buildings start to pop up. There's going to be a process whereby for the borough-controlled properties, we would want to put out a solicitation to qualified developers to partner with for that development to happen. That would be, we would be putting additional parameters on that development. Additional agreements would have to be designed with those developers, which would establish the benefits that the borough would expect to see and all of the terms of the agreement. So those are all kind of pieces of the process that are going to come after the plan is adopted. But again, there's a public component to all of that. And there'll be opportunity for interested folks to pay attention and weigh in. So with that, I'm going to stop this screen share and I'm going to turn things over to Jim and Chris, who have been working really hard to pull together these visualizations to kick off our conversation. So Jim, Chris?
Thank you. Good evening. Good evening, everyone in Highland Park. So as the borough planners, we're very excited that in less than a year after adoption of the master plan, which we worked on quite furiously last year, that we think we have an avenue for achieving the vision for downtown, which is to leverage reinvestment, revitalization, infill, and redevelopment, expand opportunities for mixed-use development, all supporting a walkable, bikeable, transit-oriented community with a thriving downtown, recognizing we have challenges in an e-commerce era, and we also have challenges coming through a post-COVID era at some point. The images that you see on the screen are the sketches that were done at the public workshops that the mayor referenced, where we had well over 100 people come out and participate at the community center. And we talked about transforming downtown, and there was an incredible amount of community support and consensus for doing just that. So to begin, we'd like to just show you the 4 tracks that we've been talking about the past few nights. On the next slide. Tract A and B are over on the left-hand side. They include the gateway area, Tract area A, which includes the Gun and Boat down to Bergen Auto, which is a property in the orange area that's actually owned by the borough right now. And there's some potential expansion in configuration issues depending on the final potential assemblage there. Across the street, Tract D, which are the 2 lots between the former Sunoco and the Mercy Venezuelan restaurant. Tract C, where the farmer's market is located, and then moving up the avenue, Tract D, which is an assemblage around North 3rd, where our public space is focused, the Festival Street that Councilman Hale referred to. So to start with a sort of a bird's eye overview, before we show the bird's eye overview, I wanted to mention one other thing about Tract D, which is that's also the site, in addition to public space, to achieve one of our other goals in the master plan, which is to really have a parking strategy and to encourage cooperative and shared parking arrangements, including permitting off-site parking as a strategy to develop really untap the potential of small development parcels. One of the reasons that development has really been challenged and you haven't seen redevelopment since the 2005 redevelopment plan is Highland Park is really challenged by having an assemblage of small parcels that really are difficult to build on, park on, close driveways on Rarity and get access from the rear. And so you're going to hear about our parking strategy, which is also a highly sustainable strategy, and will also achieve what Councilman Hale referred to as getting people, many more people walking up and down the avenue, the most sustainable economic development strategy there is. Okay, so next, we do have the bird's eye view where you can see looking up the avenue, tracks A on the left, B on the right, and C, and then finally up to D. So what I'd like to do is drop down to ground level and take a little stroll or bike ride, or for those of you using a car, drive up the avenue. So before we move forward, if we could go back, please. On the left is the gateway area, which sits between the classic cleaners and the new building under construction. You can see in the distance at the former International Market. And one of the things I wanted to speak to is the goal in the master plan of custom tailoring infill and redevelopment. Because we have all these different properties. The property on the left, in fact, all of the properties on the left, step down a level to Denison Street at the rear. And one of the challenges here is how do we take in an area of primarily two-story and some one-story buildings, how do we step up height and density and do it in a way that's appropriate from a community design perspective. So if you note the top of the classic cleaners, a little cornice line and pediment, that creates a line that becomes important as we look at, and now we'll move forward to the visualization, how to bring in a taller building next door by using heavier, and by the way, these are just massing models. They are not proposed architecture, but they represent some of the design techniques. A strong cornice line defining the storefront, lots of glazing at the ground floor, awnings, canopies, masonry that goes up, but then has an expression line as it steps to lighter materials as we move up the building towards the sky, and then a step back at the 5th floor where you can see the residents looking out where there would be a terrace. Provides that outdoor space, real loft style urban living for residents to look over the streets, see the downtown New Brunswick skyline, and then for New Brunswick to finally see Highland Park. And you can even see along the far end of the building, we're suggesting where it meets kind of a triangular corner of the property going up and adding a slight tower element with a spire. And so those are ways that you create a very articulated streetscape and this sense of arriving to town. Now, if we look across the street to the right, just past the restaurant in blue or gray that you see on the right, we're going to show you what's proposed for Tract D, which is, again, a taller building. And all of this is expanding that resident customer base downtown, that captured market that will be walking through right now what is sometimes a pretty dark zone downtown. Parking lots, former automobile or active still automobile service facilities, and really try to increase the life and the vibrancy, people out walking their dogs at 6 a.m., taking a stroll at midnight, coming back from a venue up the street. Again, you see a terracing at the upper level, cornice lines and detailing. This building is actually proposed with some bays that project out and add a little bit of rhythm along the street. But I think in combination, this, I'll call it entourage, this vista that's created, creates a sense of arriving in town that's not part of what's there today. So now we're going to move up the street and start to approach Tract C, which most people know as the home of the farmers market currently. Step up one more. And so this is proposed to be, again, a substantial component of our redevelopment. This is a property that is entirely owned by the borough. What you see is a 4-story building, and then at the beyond a terrace line that really extends back. It steps up to 5th and the 5th floor in the middle of the site. If we step in a little bit further, we can actually see that there's a courtyard between those two wings. And what's programmed for the ground floor also respects the master plan, which talks about expanding the variety of ground floor uses, but being very careful about just what's prescribed in the 2005 master plan, which is everything has to be ground floor retail. Our challenge is trying to enhance the vibrancy, retain the tenants we have, and allow recruitment into existing underperforming retail spaces. So we don't want to cannibalize that and challenge it with too much additional. So in this particular building, the wing that's closest to the bakery is envisioned as some sort of a commercial use, but it's fairly small, and that might spill out, for instance, if it was a food use with cafe tables into that courtyard that you can see just a glimpse of. The far wing of the building on the ground floor would have lobby and perhaps amenity space, maybe a fitness room, active street front uses for the residents. And it also demonstrates something that's key to our parking strategy. The front door for the lobby, the entrance for all of the buildings that we're showing, these sites, is on Raritan Avenue. And that's part of that key to having the off-site parking, a block or 2 blocks or 2.5 blocks at the furthest up the street, so that it brings residents from the buildings to the avenue and from the avenue to the building. So the orientation is to really increase this vitality along the avenue. So next, if we move up the street, this is the area that we're going to spend the bulk of the evening talking about, we refer to as Tract D. And it includes a combination of one of the widest streets in the borough, downtown, a 75-foot right-of-way on North 3rd, although we're going to talk a little bit about both sides of the street. And if we look at this area in plan view, it also includes, in addition to the street, it sort of skirts around or moves around and leaves in place the existing Provident Bank at the corner and the 3 buildings next to it, but brings in some pieces that do bookend that area and the street. So if we advance next, one of the pieces of feedback that we've been receiving is to really think about both sides of 3rd, north and south. And in fact, with this Festival Street concept, the South 3rd half a block that's been closed for a couple of months now is really a terrific example. It's testing in a pop-up, tactical, urbanist way what a Festival Street would do. We're pleased to see that, you know, nobody's been confused or driven into it. I mean, everybody understands you could probably leave this street closed. That could become the matching plaza, the mirror to what we're going to talk about on the north side. And we had thought about that early, but we're hearing that come from a number of people as a suggestion to build into the redevelopment plan, even though that's just beyond our study area. So if we go back now and look at what this public space would be composed of, we thought about North 3rd in really 2 legs. The leg that's between the bank and the former Blue Horse site would be treated in a plaza-like manner, and then there would be an extension of that all the way down to Denison Street. We have driveways to access Provident Bank at the corner, the Park Eye Center, medical building on the other side of the street that we need to work with and try to figure out if we can extend this even further. But then the idea of crossing Raritan to South 3rd and potentially even bringing some coloration into the center of the street, what we often refer to as an intersection tattoo, might make this a much larger potential space that can be closed on 2 sides for events like the farmers market. So the next piece is what can happen within this? Well, in the plaza area, that half block that we showed you between former Blue Horse and the bank, it could be open for traffic, but it also could be closed. And we've been hearing some feedback saying, why don't we just start with it as a closed space? So it could accommodate things like you see in the upper left. Farmers market, which now has, you'll notice, high quality flooring. So we're creating an outdoor room. And so a key component of this is to think about best in class public space treatments. So having a drivable street, but one that's texture colored, that's a street that feels most comfortable to walk on, that might also provide some access for vehicles. The upper right shows the ability to program it with all sorts of events, and I think as we've been talking about, things that are purely Highland Park unique. So we're going way beyond arts in the park. We're talking about all sorts of music, entertainment, special events, food truck rallies, beer fest, you name it, Halloween events this time of year for families and children. So there's an endless variety of programming that we can get to by creating this higher quality space. And then the final part showed by the last two images is thinking about a ceiling. So this outdoor room, we have a floor, we have walls, and a ceiling, and at night having the ability to bring lights across the street. These are images of the first historic district in Denver called Larimer Square. It is a uniquely wide 75-foot right-of-way, same exact as North and South 3rd is. And they actually use this grid of lights to extend over the space and create this magic quality. I've been there in the warm weather, outdoors. I've been there in the snow. I've been there multiple times. It's one of the go-to places, and it's unique and it's a signature, and nobody else has this in the New York metro region. And sort of lighting is a component with LEDs that we can change colors and atmosphere and mood and have a lot of flexibility. So now back to our plan. Back to our plan. So the ground level, as you see in the upper left, is an example of a shared space street in Princeton. The curb goes away, bollards, lampposts, bike racks, benches, landscape elements become the definition of the street, but you feel like you're driving through a plaza. On the right is the Larimer Square, and you can see what those lights that you can also hang banners on the cables look like during the daytime. And the bottom is an example of a mixed-use parking garage. It has a liner with just one little commercial use on the left side there, and punched window openings that make it look building-like. And that's key because we're actually proposing, if we go forward to the plan, that on North 3rd, we have access to this parking structure, which would front the street and become also covered parking, for instance, for the farmers market and special events by having a component of public parking on the ground floor. But the purpose of this parking structure is really to serve all of the residential and mixed-use development that we're talking about. You also see a proposed mixed-use building on the Blue Horse site over on the left. We think that that point of providing a sort of a landmark on this new plaza is critical. If we advance, we can look at what that looks like from the side today. So that would be replaced with a new landmark building. Go forward and show what this looks like today from the street. So if we were to just dream for a second and visualize what the components that we're talking about might look like if they were massed in, and that's really what this is. This isn't a finished photorealistic rendering. This is showing the scale of a proposed building, the landmark building on the left on the Blue Horse site with an open glazed corner wraparound. In this case, we believe a restaurant is a terrific use to have there that really activates the corner, would have outdoor seating on the North 3rd side. You can see again the masonry that enlightens and expression lines that tier the building up in sort of a wedding cake manner. You see the multi-level parking structure behind with some banners that you see adding a little rhythm and those punched window openings. And you see another taller building off in the distance on the right on the Bridge restaurant site, which was that bookend that we'll talk about in a second. If we can go forward. Oh, and we were depicting there, obviously the ability to potentially do things like pre-game, post-games events as one element of programming, since Highland Park is an edge of campus community to Rutgers, not so much for undergraduates, but certainly I think potentially for alumni and others, which you actually see pictured in the image on the top here. That is, you have trouble finding any undergraduate students, a lot of returning alumni. That is mixed-use community at the edge of the Notre Dame campus that our firm LRK worked on. It's called Eddy Street Commons. This is game day, football game day at Notre Dame, and this is the place to be before a game and after game. And that is one potential programming element that we could take advantage of with the festival street. And maybe people park in the garage and shuttle to the game and come back. All of that means economic development opportunities in our downtown, pre-game, post-game, and that's part of this glue and stickiness that we want people to come and stay longer and do multiple things. So as we move, the next slide, please. We wanted to just provide a scale comparison to the existing farmers market track. So on the left is what we refer to as Tract C. Basically a parking lot that also gets programmed for the farmers market and movies and some other events. It's Reformed Church on the left with its access onto this. So the scale of what's used there, if we were to compare it to what we're talking about potentially with the two closed plaza sections on North and South 3rd, is somewhat comparable. You may compact, you may have it become more of a pedestrian space in terms of doing that. And if we could go forward next to actually talk a little bit about what the street configuration, this is as it exists today, would become with the transformation where we would put in this new ground plane, which would basically make the curb go away. It would become seamless. We actually would carry stormwater down an inverted crown in the center of the street, and we could run some channels under, and we think working with the borough engineer, we can probably improve some of the drainage that comes down Raritan Avenue today. You see some sort of post with a banner that can change, that can become part of the gateway, and then that grid of small lights that extends over the space. And this is as a drivable condition. Next, we'd like to show you the same space, potentially hosting a farmer's market or some other events. And by the way, you see a screen that we're showing in gray against the blank wall of Provident Bank with a little stage in front of it. So there's all sorts of event programming and things where you could have, we'll show you in the next one, live bands out there. You could have DJ nights, food truck rallies, food events, cultural events, arts events. It's really up to the community to figure out those things that would be uniquely Highland Park, that would have a home that perhaps is not quite there today for hosting these things. Handicapped accessible, so we're compliant in terms of American Disabilities Act. It absolutely gives you a lot of opportunities to do things, and potentially, if we just zoom in, I think we have one more close up, just to show you that there's the ability to really put a lot of people into a public space post-COVID where we can really enjoy cultural and special events. Okay, so next we'd like to just wrap up and show the remaining components of Tract D. So there is a proposed mixed-use building shown on the right, on the current Bridge restaurant, that backs up to the multi-level parking structure. Now you'll notice that parking structure, we have a parking lot that sits on Denison Street today, so we want to line it and basically put a residential face that's appropriate for Denison Street. So if we go forward, we know that we have a beautiful neighborhood that extends up into the north side today. Next, please. Unfortunately, when you reach the end of the neighborhood and get to this location today, next, you're really greeted by an unscreened, huge parking lot. Doesn't feel like you've arrived in a transition to downtown. You really have arrived at the back of the house. So what we're proposing here is this liner along the parking garage, is that we would do something that would echo a little bit of the office across the street. Maybe there's a work-live unit on the ground floor, some apartments above. This is what we call our corner bookend. And then further down Denison, we just extend, we've tried to pick up the rhythm of the residential scale and character. Next, please. And then looking from this angle, what that would look like by changing the character from the corner, which is masonry and transitions to the office and the commercial buildings, and really bring something with porches and verandas and a rhythm, window patterns and things of that nature that really match the scale and the character of the neighborhood and create a much more walkable experience than walking along the edge of an unscreened parking lot today. So with that, I think we were just going to wrap up by showing one last time how this multi-level parking structure is really within easily within a 5-minute walk. Actually, the 1,000 feet represents about a 4-minute walk of the front doors of all of the tracks here. And it's really key to untap the potential of these sites. So they're all an interrelated set of strategies. I think that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
You're welcome.
So we're about to enter into our comments and questions period. I just want to remind everyone that we will be following the same format we use for council meetings. I will announce that I'm calling on the borough administrator to tell me who's raising their hands. Each person will be given 3 minutes to allow for the most people possible to ask their questions or give their comments. And then we will try to break at 8 o'clock, as the administrator said earlier. So today, if you would look at your phone, if you want to make a comment or ask a question, press *9 or raise your hand on the Zoom app, and the borough administrator, Terry Hovier, will let us know who is up. And she'll keep us pretty much informed of the time as we go on. And I'm going to ask that the questions today be, at least we start with questions that are geared to this Tract D that we're talking about specifically today. And then if time allows, we'll move on to questions for Tracts A, B, and C. So at this point, Terry, I'm going to ask you to see if there are any hands raised, and we can begin the questioning and answering portion of this.
Sure thing. I do see some hands, so I'm going to call on Sharon Garber. I've unmuted you. Please state your name and let us know either where you live, work, or what your association with Highland Park is.
I both live and work in Highland Park. I have a store, Covered Girl Clothing. It's right closer to 3rd on Raritan, between 2nd and 3rd. One of my big concerns is the parking. I'm not 100% clear on this parking facility that you're proposing. I have a question. Is there going to be, in the diagram it had like, the typical arms to open and close a parking structure? Does that mean that you're going to charge for it, which would definitely discourage people from coming to this area? Or is it, would it be free for for people to park? And would this parking structure, and I'm going to say this because years ago. We're still waiting for a sign that was going to explain to people coming into town how to go around the block to go into the current parking lot that's used by the farmers market, etc. That, you know, when they closed off the Raritan entrance. So those are that's my big concerns right now. And will the parking that's actually on the street currently be untouched? So.
Okay, so is Joe on the call yet?
I'm Mayor. I'm here, Mayor. Yes.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Joe, do you want to address the parking lot and how it's going to be used and
Yeah.
filled, and then Terry, you can talk about the street parking.
Yeah. Let me. So one of the premise on this project, as has been explained, is to centralize parking and allow us to do greater density on property that's either owned or controlled by the borough or with property owners that are willing to work with us. And so those are those 4 areas. The proposed garage, as we sit here today, is a proposed garage. It fits there nicely because of the depth, the length and width that is required to build garages. There's specific dimensions that really make garages efficient and less expensive. How we are working through the issues of how to pay for the garage, with the goal being that we do it without imposing too much of an expense on taxpayers. So we're looking at things like the property that the borough will be developing, its own property, using the proceeds from that sale to help pay for the garage. In terms of the final economics, whether it's got a garage that's attended or not attended, or gated or not gated, who pays, who doesn't pay, whether it's paid for for long-term parking by the residents that are going to use it, that occupy the new projects, or by the landlords that own those projects, all to be determined. We're now really just in the infancy stage of trying to identify the best locations for these things and what's the proper zoning. And we have some general ideas on how to pay for it and afford it, but in terms of how it actually will play out, that's I venture to say a year from now before we sort that out, but that's part of the process for sure. In terms of the street parking itself, I think we recognize that we have to understand it better and look at it. It's pretty unregulated right now in Highland Park, generally. And so we'll have to think about how the unregulated parking and a paid parking garage can work together. For the reasons that you're alluding to, people will just go park where it's free. And that may flood the adjoining roads. It may cause people to long-term park in front of their businesses when they're residents. So all that has to be considered.
I mean, you're going to discourage people from shopping in, I have a store, so that's my concern. If they have to, pay for parking, it's not, it's not friendly to, you're saying you want to encourage businesses to thrive. And as far as I can tell, it would just be discouraging people if you're bringing a lot more people in to the area and the only parking is being charged.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we haven't decided how.
It's counter your overall goal.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying we're going to charge for parking or not charge for parking. I'm just saying we haven't sorted it out yet.
Okay.
But what we're trying to do, I mean, this is specifically targeted for someone like yourself, which is to put more people into the downtown, to spend money in the businesses that are located in the downtown, and doing it in a way that doesn't add more businesses to the downtown. So these projects are all light on retail, heavy on wallets.
Well,
And Sharon, if you don't mind, I'm just worried about the time a little bit. I
Sure.
did want to address your question about wayfinding signs. It's a point well taken, and you're right. It's not the first time we've talked about it. And I'd ask our planning team to kind of put that in our, try to get that in the plan in some way if possible, so that it doesn't fall through the cracks, because I think that will be a critical component for this all pulling together.
All right, Terry, does,
Yeah. Yep, we've got some more. Hold on one second. I just have to, if I don't lower the hands as I go, it gets really confusing. Rob Roslowitz is back with us this evening. I'm going to unmute you. Rob, just confirm that it's you, please. And,
Yes, it is me.
okay.
So I wanted to lead off with a question. I was curious to know roughly how many spots we are proposed in the parking structure, and if the majority of those spots would then be delegated to the parking for the other tracks.
okay, so Joe, do you want to take that one too?
Sure. So the parking garage itself also is not sized specifically yet. It would be a shared parking, the garage, and what I mean by that is we would want it to accommodate shoppers, visitors, and residents. And you could do that yeah, depending. And so when we get to the sizing of the garage and determining the exact number of spaces that will be in the garage, we're going to want to make sure that when we're done, we've accommodated the new projects, there's room for growth, and there's continues to be adequate parking, or even ideally more parking for the businesses.
Okay, as a follow-up to that, I mean, overall, my concern is that a parking structure in that location, Tract D, it really emphasizes facilitated parking for the 80 units that are proposed for Tract D, whereas like Tract A and Tract C, each with 80 units with lesser parking or no parking, and with a 5-minute walk back and forth to their cars, aren't going to be as preferable. And that a lot of those people would, like we've talked about before, they may well park on Magnolia Street or Denison or some other street and take up parking from other residents. Whereas, because we've never really been able to have like a parking authority in town. We have 1-hour time limits on Raritan Avenue, where when we did the redoing of the street, those signs disappeared because we weren't ever able to enforce those regulations anyway. So part of my concern is that, we're looking at the largest Tract D, we're looking at 2 mixed-use buildings with 80 units, and it gets its own parking deck. But then, I'm wondering about like the density, if you're looking at the square footage of that tract, how much are we losing out by not developing it further with less parking? I feel like focusing any amount of our effort on parking is using an older and outdated model. This parking structure needs to have more to it, where it's like, is a portion allocated to ride sharing or car share? Is a portion of it allocated to bicycle parking? Everything about this parking structure strikes and smacks me the wrong way. And I'm just trying to find more from you guys to make me feel good about it.
Yeah, I think, I'm sorry, Mayor.
It's okay. So I'm going to ask Jim first, and then you, Joe, to talk a little about his experience with parking decks for apartment or condominium or whatever complexes, and people walking a block or two to get to parking when you're looking at this type of downtown living. So Jim, you want to talk to that? And then Joe, would you chime in with what you were going to add?
Sure. Well, the first point I think is that we have really unbundled, which is a sort of a state-of-the-art term that can help attract people that are less auto-centric and auto-oriented, lower car ownership rates, much lower car usage rates, because those folks are actually looking for opportunities to live in livable, walkable environments. There are folks that are often using transit now. It's a little bit of a build it and they will come. And we've been through this in a number of other situations. And so by having the parking in a separate location. And I've lived in a downtown with parking 3 blocks away, so I've experienced it personally for some period of time as well. We tend to attract folks that don't need to have 2 cars at their door, which there's plenty of opportunities in Highland Park and Middlesex County to have that sort of an apartment living. We want downtowners. And so the first thing is this arrangement tends to achieve that. The second is I'm assuming Joe can speak to the fact that there will be lease requirements and other things that will require residents with cars to park in the garage. And we also have been talking about neighborhood parking restrictions that will further kind of induce people to be in the right location. But the primary purpose of the garage is to service all of the redevelopment that we're showing here. There could be some ground floor spaces available for public usage for certain periods, or perhaps all the time. We haven't gotten there. And they would be covered spaces. I think that would be ideal with the farmers market. And my guess is you have folks that would find that a more convenient arrangement than what's available today on that front.
Okay, and Joe, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just let me add. So one of the beauties of the redevelopment process and the properties that we've identified are those that we can control through redevelopment agreements by which we will enter into contractual obligations with the property owners. So for example, if we were to go through a competitive process and put Tract C out into the marketplace, take proposals, we all evaluate, we pick a developer and then we negotiate a payment that they would have to make in perpetuity to provide parking for their residents. So they would build it into their rents. They'd be required to have their residents park there. So we have the benefit of using our redevelopment powers and our contracting powers and the fact that we control all the land by and large to have the parking go where we want it to go. And then there's also other strategies that can be employed as a part of that process. And then the garage itself will certainly accommodate everything that you described. It's now it's just a placeholder on a map, but it will have a lot more detail as we go along. We try to figure out what could be in that garage.
Okay. Thank you. Terry, is there another hand?
Yep. Hold on 1 second. Next on my list here is Joe Smalley. If you could just confirm your name and your proximity to Highland Park.
We need the address for the record.
Yes.
Yes.
Hi.
Hello. Yeah. Me and my wife own and live in a house across the street from the proposed parking deck on Denison Street. First of all, I want to thank the mayor, Mr. Constantine, Terry, and Joe for presenting this plan, which in a lot of ways excites me. I agree that Highland Park needs some revitalization, and it's good to know that there's some planning in place for that. Unfortunately, I'm also going to bring up parking. Currently, our house, we don't even have a driveway, and we have 2 cars, so we rely on street parking. Right above, right at the top of that image that's being shown right now. And it's one side of the street parking, so it's already fairly limited. And I think Mr. Constantine was maybe alluding to some neighborhood parking restrictions, maybe providing tags for residents, something along those lines. I would just like to suggest that and put those comments into the record. That's the one thing that concerns me the most.
Thank you. And we have heard that from other folks who live in the area of the redevelopment as well. And it's something that the borough administrator actually raised earlier at one of our other meetings. So we are going to look into that.
Thank you very much.
That condition, that issue came up with some of for on the south side kind of tracks as well on Magnolia Street, that concern was echoed. So I do think we're going to have to dig into that a bit.
That's
Thank you,
great.
Joe.
Thank you.
You're
Those are
welcome.
my only comments.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, who's next?
We've got, it looks like our friend Carl Prey is back. You're unmuted. Please just confirm it's you and state your name and address.
Actually, I'm going to let Mary talk. She's my wife.
Hi there.
Address?
317 Dennison Street. I'm back. And I have to say, I'm really not happy with this. And I read the 2019 master plan, and there's absolutely nothing about building a parking garage in there. And you're saying that you're going along with the plans that have been discussed. In the master plan, parking was very, very low. It was, I think, the second to the bottom of concerns that people in Highland Park have. And the fact that you've not asked anybody about building a parking garage, I just think is really bad. You know, in a lot of places, parking garages must have to be underground. And I think that you are using, you know, old ideas to bring about what you think is going to be economic development. And I really kind of question whether that's going to be the case. What I wonder is the fact that this whole Tract D is owned by a single person who is also a potential developer. If that's why all of a sudden you're all very interested in developing this area of town, when, and I don't want to push this off on other neighborhoods, but the Sunoco station, you're doing a big thing right near the Sunoco station. The Sunoco station is available. And the little strip mall there is also for sale now. And why don't you think about actually putting requiring underground parking someplace? I mean, this is going to be a big monstrosity. And I think the street that we live on has families in it with small children. This is only going to increase the amount of cars that are going around. And if you call yourself, you know, people who are trying to encourage a walking town, I mean, it's really pretty laughable. I used to work in Trenton, and I walked to the train station for 25 years. And I am not a car person. And we moved to Highland Park because it was a place to get around where you can walk to the train station and manage a life. And there are places you can walk to get the important things in your life done. And I just don't think that this isn't gonna make Highland Park a better place. And I hope that other people are opposed to a parking garage.
Joe or Jim, just to put it out there are parking requirements from the state of New Jersey regarding number of units and bedrooms and that sort of thing.
I know that.
No, I'm not asking you. I want to know. Yes.
Now, let me take just a couple of thoughts to address the comments. One, yeah, there are SIS requirements, and those would be relaxed likely in this area. And I'll let the public know, because they don't know this, Mayor, that you had admonished us not to ever let this garage be too big. I think we at one point had a bigger garage, and you were pretty clear that this needs to be right size and not be too large. So we're definitely not trying to over park or overbuild in this area. The other thing I want to, you mentioned other locations, and the challenge with redevelopment is we don't have a blank slate, and we have economic constraints to everything we're doing. So when you start to plot out how to make this work, you have to identify pieces of property where, for example, a garage could fit, and there are specific dimensions in a garage for an ideal garage to fit, and there aren't a lot of those locations in Highland Park, and you also want them to be relatively close to the action. So that begins to, and then you need a property owner who's willing to work with you, possibly work with you. So we've reached out to this property owner who expressed an interest to work with us. We picked it not because of who the property owner is, but because of the property itself. And then in terms of underground parking, It's very expensive. And so we also have to be sort of mindful of the economic realities of everything we're doing here and how to make it all work financially with limited impact to taxpayers. And that's sort of how we end up in this location. So it's not really driven by who owns the property, it's driven by the property itself, the constraints of what a garage needs to be built, and then the coming out of the ground as opposed to going underground is driven in large part by the financial constraints associated with it, which makes it just much more expensive until it becomes prohibitive. So we're trying to marry, we're trying to achieve our goals, in a downtown that, lacks, we're not, again, in a blank slate situation, we have to work with what we have. And this is sort of the way combining best location, not a disruption of already existing buildings, keeping the costs as low as possible, identifying places where people are willing to work with us or we own the property, and we sort of settle on this location. So, and then again, from the mayor and the council, if we understand you need a garage, make sure you don't make it too big. And so the size of that garage is to be determined, by the way.
Well, this part of Raritan Avenue from third basically up to from fourth up to fifth. I mean, this is the most vibrant part of the commercial part of Highland Park. And I don't see that this is going to enhance that at all. And I still would like someone to explain to me why this property has been available for a very long time. It has been consolidated for a very long time. And why has it never, ever been in any of the master plans? Why has no one ever talked about? I mean, the master plan was approved in December 2019. And there was not a mention of a parking garage in there. So I'd like to know what has changed.
Or this property at all.
Or this property at all. This property has never been mentioned as an area for redevelopment.
I'd like to address Mary's comment. Go to the master plan. So under our downtown strategies on page 37 of the 2019 master plan, maybe before I read this, just also indicate that we recognize that there are challenges downtown because parking is not managed. It is anyone can park anywhere for any amount of time. We know this comes up in other neighborhoods, whether they live there, whether they're working there, whether they're in front of a store that may be blocking customer traffic all day long. So the strategy in the master plan was prepare a parking management plan that evaluates parking needs in relation to leveraging revitalization, infill, and redevelopment by better managing on-street parking, right-sizing parking requirements to actual demand, encouraging cooperative and shared parking arrangements, which this is, and permitting off-site parking as a strategy to develop smaller properties, which this is. The site and the opportunity for this has evolved since the master plan. We weren't trying to call out specific. There's very few locations that could accommodate that sort of parking strategy in the downtown with the right geometries and everything. I agree, in a perfect world, it'd be great to bury parking and not see it. Then the cost triples or quadruples and probably makes development unfeasible.
Well, I think.
Excuse me, Mary. Sorry, we do have a number of people behind you, and we've definitely gone over your time. If we have time, we can come back to you. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to move on. Didn't mean to be rude, but I see a bunch of hands there. Sorry, Mayor. Next up is Mark. Could you please state your name in full and tell us your address? I've unmuted you. Mark?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. Mark Liebeskind. I work at 233 Raritan Avenue. Actually, I manage the properties from 233 through 241 Raritan Avenue. We 233 and 235 is a mixed-use facility, has 2 retail stores, including Sharon Garber's store, 3 apartments, and we have the largest privately owned public assembly space in Highland Park. We are permitted to have 247 people here. We have 3 rooms, 1 large room, which holds 147 people, and 2 rooms in the lower level, which hold 100 total. And we rely solely on public parking. We've been using, most of the time, our customers can find street parking, but they also use the farmers market parking lot, which is also shared by the church. Now I see in one of the, I guess that's Tract C, it looks like you're scaling back the parking for that parking lot by maybe 75%. So I'm wondering, one question I have is, what about all of the church activities that go on? Where are those people going to park? Because I know that that lot gets packed on certain days. And if there's something going on a weekend night, it's also packed. Most of our large events are on the weekends, in the evenings. And most of the people come from out of town. So if we're having a wedding party, a bat mitzvah, bar mitzvah, even though the resident that's having the party might be local, most of the guests are coming from out of town. So my concern, just like other people, is where are our customers going to park? That's that's the biggest question I have, because if we don't have parking, then we're not going to be able to survive here. And then I think my other comment was about the Festival Street. It seems to me in some ways that actually runs contrary to the business activities. We're also going to lose parking on that part of North 3rd, that half. And the farmers market is so big now sometimes, I don't think it's going to fit in that one section. And you're talking about doing it on the other side of the street. I'm concerned about the traffic congestion and the safety issues and people crossing the street and not really paying attention to the traffic lights when they're going to cross. I just wonder why something like this can't be held in the park, in Donaldson Park. I mean, part of this area here, where the Festival Street is proposed, is residential. You know, are people really going to want to hear bands and DJs in the evening when they're coming home from work? I think that they're probably, maybe they want to have a quiet area the way it is now. And having a movie theater there as well, or movie screen, it just seems counterproductive to improving the business area. And those are my comments at this point.
Okay. So all of the parking discussion that is coming up tonight will be taken into consideration as we start moving forward and thinking about the plan overall. Terry, is there someone else?
Sure. Just give me a second. Move on to the next hand. Excuse me. I was taking notes, so I got a little distracted. Sorry about that. It looks like I have a Michael Garber. I'm going to unmute you. I'm going to have to promote you to panelist because you have an older version of Zoom. I'm sorry. Michael, can you say something so we know you're there? I'm having trouble making that happen, Mayor. I'm sorry. Michael, are you there? It's got something to do, it says promote, I'm clicking on promote to panelist, and yet it does not appear to be doing that. Michael, bear with me. I'm gonna go to the next person until I can try to figure that out. I'm sorry about that. I'm gonna go to Thansi Diaz. I've unmuted you.
Please state your name and address.
Thansi, you may have to unmute yourself. Thansi, you're still muted.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
My apologies. Hi, I was trying to figure out how to get to the unmute. So Fancy Diaz, I own the property at 228 Raritan Avenue. So I'm adjacent to the Tract C activity. Correct. And you just had it up in the other screen, I think, with closer detail. So I think parking has been well discussed, and I share a number of folks' concerns around parking, but I wanted to just talk a little bit about other pieces of concern. Specifically, the structures that you're proposing in a couple places are going to be 4 stories. And the dentist office, which is next to my home, is 2 stories. My home is 2 stories. So clearly when you build a 4-story building in that area, there will be, and I saw that you'd have like sort of rooftop areas maybe, and again, I know this will come to be designed, but I'm a bit curious about, has thought been given around how you would manage or mitigate the impact to houses having obscured views, right? And the implication to that. So like with my home, we'd go from having, sunlight and visuals, right? And all of that to having like a large building and wall that goes up. And so I wanted to understand if thought had been given to that at all. And I think the only other comment which is unique to this is that currently, because of my property's proximity to the farmer's market, we have a lot of people who come in and park in our space or try to park in our space if they can't find parking elsewhere, because we have a larger parking area in the back. And just, commentary around plans on how to manage that, the increase of flow that you're going to get, that they're not trying to find parking in my backyard, is more personal to my property. So those are the 2 thoughts that I have, and would love your guys' initial thoughts on how you're going to manage that, maybe contractually with the redevelopers, et cetera.
Thank you. Jim, do you want to talk to the impact of the size of the buildings on houses that are there?
Sure. Maybe just a quick comment first on the parking. I think what's happening to you right now is in part a symptom of the fact that we really don't have managed parking downtown. So we're hoping to try to co-locate things and create logical wayfinding and routing and make it easier for people so you don't have that sort of an impact that you have today. The second issue on the height is under the existing B1 zoning, somebody can build right next to your property line today at a taller height than your building is. That said, because we're in a redevelopment plan, we can look at trying to carefully craft views. In fact, one of our goals is to custom tailor infill and redevelopment by creating site-specific plans. And so while we're just at the massing level right now, we can actually have greater control than we can if somebody were to, for instance, assemble the property next door to you, or a couple of those properties, and propose a building under existing zoning where it could be right up to the line and taller than you.
And Gail, I think that's helpful. And I think what I would be interested in, and I would probably be worthwhile to have some separate discussion in more depth, is just, as the redevelopment plan forms with the developer and as the bid goes forward, it's just really understanding, is it a fence to kind of create a visual separation, something as simple as that? Is it the way the building looks relative? But literally people will be looking over at both the dentist's office and my property, like looking down at the property. And I understand that, redevelopment is important in Highland Park. And I think, having owned this property as long as I have, we've been talking about this for a very long time, and probably before I've owned it. So I do just want to be careful that, that my property isn't in a spot where we've got, hanging terraces right over my backyard and things like that. And would like some, thoughtful design for the portion that butts up against my property, that, there's a delineation, and that folks it's a natural look there, if anything. I think similar to some of the thoughtful conversations we've been having on Denison, I know there's other challenges there around how that's done and having some input into that, because it will be adjacent to my property and affect my property value and the ultimate comfort of my my tenants there.
Right, right. Jim is nodding his head. I know he's been thinking about the same things you're talking about, and I'm sure we'll be having more conversations with you as time goes on this.
Yes, thank you. And like I said, with regards to the parking, I think it's and the dentist and I both have, managed it over the years, but it is just people literally come down our driveway and just park there, and then they go to the farmer's market or the church or wherever. And so just, if there's something that we can think about, maybe it's, simple things like signs coming out of the redevelopment, right, for that area, and indicating this is private parking, and there's a penalty attached to that if they park and they're not allowed to, right? Something to that nature would be helpful.
And also, Terry, even now, this may be something else for you to talk to John Sergeant or Lieutenant Satchow about, since he's in traffic.
Yes, we'll do. I know that something else along those lines came up the other night. I'll do a 1-2 there. All right, we've got a list. I'd like to move to the next speaker, Mayor, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Oops, I hope I didn't. Looks like I have, just so you know, Mayor, we have 7 minutes to 8, and I've got what I'm counting as 1, 2, 3, 4 people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Would you like me to, I just wanted to give you that heads up. There are a couple other repeats, but we have 4 people who haven't had a chance.
Okay, so I'm going to ask those 4 people to please, stick with topics that perhaps we haven't discussed yet. And if we don't get to people to repeat their questions, there will certainly be opportunities for you to ask those questions directly of the borough administrator. She gave you her contact information, but also there will certainly be other opportunities as we start to move forward with the next scheduled events to talk about where we're headed.
Absolutely. So the next up is Jay Eng. Could you please state your name and your address, please? You need to unmute. There you go.
Judy Yang. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
All right, Judy Yang. I'm at 14 North 2nd. Mike, I have some questions in regards, and I just want to get my say in. I know they have allocations to parking and how many cars to each apartment, this and that. And my concern is that I kind of feel that number's quite disingenuous. When you have, like, say, 1 car to the apartment, there'll be 2 or 3 adults in the apartment, be a 2-bedroom, and it might be 2 or 4 adults in there, and you're going to tell me 1 car, and then you're saying you want to limit the size of the parking lot. I'm thinking you may actually undersize it and undersize the amount of space that the landlord's required to purchase. I watch it today. I watch all the people in Raritan Avenue in the apartments that are on Raritan Avenue park on North 2nd, because I actually watch them park, and then I walk up to the corner. I want to see where they live, and I actually see them leave it overnight. I see them walk back to their apartments that are back and above Raritan Avenue. So as you take the parking away, I don't know why you don't petition the state to allow you to park on the state highway. Okay, 1, to create more parking space on the main street so they don't have to be on the side street, because I know people on the other track, that's where the gun and boat shop is, all those folks are not going to 3rd Avenue to park their cars. When you go to the malls, everybody drives around. They'll drive around the mall till they can get a spot really close. I expect the same thing because I see it today. They all park on 2nd Avenue. And so I'm just saying, I want them to poll the people, not use some kind of number, poll how many cars are in the apartment and see how many spots you really, really need in this town. Because I think you have a lot more cars to the amount of people in the apartments than you think. And you can't allocate 1 car to a 2-bedroom apartment. That's what I saw last time. And then you buy parking spot up at the Dunkin' Donuts or something like that. And nobody's walking that far. So I just want realistic numbers and realistic solutions, because the real habits of people is what we see and what I see. What do people really do? Because people drive around and go look for the closest spot. They're not parking over there. They're going to the closest spot. I see them park at 2nd Avenue. I come home, I can't get a spot in front of my house because they leave it overnight. And then if they're in an apartment complex and commuting in New York, they're leaving the car all day, all week, off in front. They're not parking over in the parking lot, especially if you're charging them. You need to find spots in Raritan Avenue. You leave those spots there and stop taking them away on 3rd Avenue. You need to leave the spots that are there and create more. Not take any away, because by subtraction, you're putting them into the parking deck. So how much net did you really get? You're taking stuff away, then you go, what's the net? That's where my concern is.
Okay.
And I had the same concern Ms. Diaz had with my property and with the terrace over by where the gun and boat shop. They overlook my property. You got a 5-story terrace thing, or whatever that is back there, right over my property. And looking at my kids, I don't want that.
Okay, so Jim is I see him taking notes on your property, and the same thing that we said to Hansi would hold true for any of the houses that are going to be affected by the buildings near them. So,
I have no sun. I would get no sun because you allowed Anton to build on Raritan Avenue. And then if you build on the other side, I will get no sun like after 12 o'clock in my yard anymore. Because there is no sun coming through with the height of the buildings. You allowed him to make the height of his buildings. And then so when the sun goes around on the Raritan on that side, I don't get any sun. And then at least when it comes around over the back side, over where the gun and boat shop is, I get in the afternoon. Now if you put a 4 or 5-story structure there right on top of my property, you need to put parking back there because that's where you need parking. No one's parking. There's no spots. They're not going to 3rd Avenue, and they're parking on 2nd.
yeah, we are looking at an overall parking plan for the residential streets. I think Terry mentioned that before, and we are concerned about parking on the residential street. So we are looking into that.
The church used to have.
Ms. Eng, I'm sorry, we've hit the limit there, and we do have the 3 other folks behind.
There's one more thing. You have that church lot right there. I don't know why you guys used to rent that church lot on North 2nd. I don't know if you get that. That would open up so much parking, and it would give relief, and the tenants could go there.
Yep.
You can have them they will actually park in that spot if you had a building there. They would not go to 3rd. Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, who's next, Terry?
Looks like Ballard is up next. Ballard, please just state your name and address, confirm it's you.
Okay. Hi, I'm calling in reference to 309 Raritan Avenue, but also the Rebarber property and the Bongiovanni property. We have some questions here. We're being bookended by these huge buildings and the Festival Street. Our parking is going to be blocked. Currently, we have an easement that goes around our building and around the mixed-use building that Mr. Polos owns, and an exit on Dennison Street, which we won't be able to have if this parking garage is as it stands. So our only ingress and egress into our property is from the Festival Street, which is going to be closed, not closed, who knows. So, what do you have to say about that? I mean, it's really, we're being blocked in and totally contained.
So Jim, do you want to address that?
Yeah, be my guest.
Sure. So you're in one of the buildings between Provident Bank and the Bridge Restaurant, which is shown here.
I am.
Those mixed use, yes, just clarifying. So we have regularized the rear parking that's shared across the 3 properties there. We are aware that there are some easement issues that we would need to work out.
Correct.
With you. There are 9 spaces for Provident Bank that actually, under this concept, relocate into the parking structure. And some of the ideas.
But maybe not. But actually, suppose they don't want to give them up and they want access. I mean, are you just going to take them?
So Jim, Ballard, let him finish the parking discussion, and then you can ask that question.
Sure.
Yeah. So one of the goals of the beginning all the way back in the 2003 master plan was to try to address, and in the 2005 downtown redevelopment plan, and really carried forward in a lot of other work by other groups related to planning in town, has been try to address the driveways on Raritan. I know what you're referring to right now is coming in from North Third, but you know, for instance, on Provident Bank, we have a drive through that exits onto Raritan. And part of that was just a recognition in a pedestrian friendly downtown, it needs to be safe, and that actually a lot of pedestrian and bicycle strikes that were documented back in 2003 related. So we've been trying to figure out ways to, as a complete streets community, consolidate individual driveways and access points, and to try to push them into places that are less threatening to the safety of pedestrians. And we think about the 8-year-old, the 80-year-old, somebody that may be, you know, has some physical issue where they're not walking as fast. Every driveway you cross, you know, is a danger zone. So we are trying to consolidate and share driveways, which is, you know, one of the goals that the borough has had, you know, all the way back to the 2003 master plan for downtown.
I understand.
And I realize it requires coordination, cooperation, and, you know, hopefully in dialogue, community mindedness that we can find, you know, working with people to try to create ideal solutions for everyone, and not just the easiest solution for motorists. That's what you want in your downtown. Will be loaded with driveways. We're closing lots of driveways up and down the avenue and trying to consolidate access with these plans.
So Jim, as you start.
We don't have any access on Raritan Avenue.
Ballard, just a second. Jim, as you start finalizing more thinking on the parking deck and the easement and the properties, the building Ballard's talking about and the other two, keep in mind the needs of the people that work in those three properties to be able to get in and out of that parking lot a little bit easier.
Yes.
Let me just say something about cooperation. Other people in this area have closed their parking lots at different times. The parking lot that we have had in the back has always been open to all the residents. So we're actually the most cooperative. But we have no access to Raritan Avenue. If you close down our ingress and our right to come in and out of our property, and you've made no accommodation for that. You've put these huge buildings that are going to have many, many people, very high density, and it's really a problem.
Well, that's why I asked him to keep that in mind as he works through the plans on.
I'm sure, but it's
property.
It's really a property because these are viable businesses.
Yep. Yep.
I hope.
Yes.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Who's next?
We've got, hold on one sec. Looks like we have Jim Nichols. I'm going to unmute. Jim, please just state your full name and your address, please.
James Nichols. I'm at 232 Harrison. I just wanted to observe one overall observation, which is that I think what gives me pause about the overall strategy is that the two best things about Highland Park now, in my view, the farmers market and Pino's, that their programs are being relocated and disrupted in a way that I think we ought to be very careful about what the impacts of that will be. It's kind of like the reward for these successes ends up being not a reward, or let's make sure it's a reward. And so I would want to make sure that the Festival Street really does function to support the farmers market, especially the scale that its success has engendered, and specifically about that a lot of it is serviced by trucks rather than it's not a Heinz Plaza little kiosk. The kind of farmers market that you illustrate in your rendering is really not a truck-based farmers market. It's cuter and more decorative, but less what we have going on there. And I think on the existing farmers market site, there's a lot of spontaneous activity associated not only with Main Street, but with the church. A lot of the church's clients are social service clients who are a big deal in Highland Park, as well as organizations that use the church. Their loss of convenient parking, but also shared public space, I think is something we need to be mindful of in planning that parcel. So overall, what I'm just wondering, maybe if we can, when I look at this site where the Festival Street is, I'm wondering if the overall economics could be supported as well by maybe rebalancing the program and putting more of the housing on this 3rd Avenue site and having it be more coherent architecturally and less of a collage of the optimal parking deck typology, and some things stuck around it, that the image that I conjure for that site has better integration of parking and housing. And just like on the Church and Main Street current site, that would have a better integration of market housing, probably occasional parking for church use and public, and a more robust and vital housing climate than what looks now like a private housing development stuck onto the church and its social service population. So I think it would be much more typical of Highland Park if these programmatic elements are less balkanized and more integrated. Do you see what I'm driving at?
Yeah.
And I know that's a big order for planners, but I think it's much more in keeping with what makes Highland Park tick. And so my big question is that if we took these same elements, like the profit centers of housing development, and made them more fluid between this particular site and the farmers market site, and maybe the other site. And maybe the parking deck is not the most profitable parking deck configuration in the world, but maybe it's an 85% perfect parking deck, which is more urbanistically robust. So
Thank you.
Those are my comments.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna give myself a second chance at, I think what will be our final, at least new speaker.
It has to be.
Okay, Michael Garber, I'm gonna try, during the break, I think I know what I have to do. I'm going to promote you to panelists. And can you now try speaking and stating your name? Oh, I'm sorry, your video's on. I'll stop your video because that's not been there, but might need to unmute yourself. Michael, I saw you there.
So Terry, if Michael can hear me, I'm going to ask you to send your question.
Wait, let me try one thing, I tried one more thing. Sorry, Mayor. Yeah, I did what I could do to make
Yeah.
it.
So Michael, if you can hear me, please send your question to Terry Hover. She gave out her email before.
I think he and I changed emails already today, so I'm sure he can reach out, and I apologize for the technical issue.
Okay. All right. So there was a lot of really good input tonight, and as we said at the very beginning, this is the beginning stages of our planning for downtown development. The exciting thing is that we are moving forward. We will find a way to do this the best way possible for all of Highland Park. And stay tuned as we take the input and move on to our next step in all of this. And if anyone did not have a chance to express anything, please again, send your questions to Terry Hover. It's TJOVER @hpboro.com. Thank you all, and good night.
Good night.